All right, that's muted.
Okay. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us on this installment of Keep Calm and Carry. This week, I've got a bit of a different take for a guest. He is not from this country. He's from across the pond. He is not a YouTuber, but he has a very large presence on Instagram and does some pretty amazing things with some of his interests as far as firearms and stuff like that. So before we get into our guest, I just wanted to once again say thank you to everybody who participated in not only the giveaway last week, but also your well wishes for my birthday, which was last Friday. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciated it. Had a great weekend. Good times, surprise party, all that jazz. It ended up turning out to be a pretty cool weekend. So really do appreciate everybody's well wishes on that. And then also I wanted to take a second just to let you guys know again, of course, we are still running the giveaway for this guy right here, the Olight M2R Warrior, over on Instagram and Facebook. Basically, I'm looking to try to boost my Instagram followers. So I'm trying to get to 1,000. Once I hit 1,000, I'm going to randomly pick someone from the list as per the instructions go on Instagram. So there you have it. Thanks again for the support on last week's giveaway. Please support me on this, the Instagram giveaway. And of course, always head on over to some of the fellow pages that I also like to follow on YouTube, which is going to be Coda Boy 32, Bald and Curious, Big Johnson, Guns, those guys, Pops Quest. All of those guys are supporting the CMAX giveaway. By all means, reach out, check those guys out, support CMAX. I've got a link in last week's live chat that can send you right over to the CMAX donation page to really support him and his medical costs for cancer treatment and such. So there's tons of stuff all over the interwebs about that stuff. I'll let you guys research it. But again, I just wanted to ask everybody to please do what you can to support CMAX. So real quick, before we get into our guest, I wanted to say hey to everybody. American Made, 1999. Thank you so much. I did not get the magazine sent off. I will get those sent off to you tomorrow. Big Al, Ez Johnson, Andrew, Stephen, Logan. Thanks for swinging by, guys. It's so far just a few of you guys. If you are watching, go ahead and chime in and also ask your questions. We will be watching those. Okay. All right, so let's get on to our guest. So as I've mentioned, I have a Instagram page, and in Instagram, a lot of people don't realize that there is quite a bit of a following for the gun community on Instagram. And with that being said, there's a number of people that I've started to follow on Instagram that have some pretty cool pages that outline some of the things that they have, some of the things that they've been able to shoot, some things that they like to be around, so on and so forth. And one of those individuals is my guest this week. He goes by the handle on Instagram of Kansas Brit. And I'm going to turn it over to him. Sir, tell me all about you, and please explain to me why you don't sound like us.
Well, thanks for having me on, Mark. This is, the first time I've ever done anything like this. I don't really have too much of a social media presence outside of Instagram. I was on Facebook for a little bit, didn't like it, so kind of deleted that and got off. And I just never got around to creating a YouTube channel and really going down that direction. So this is pretty cool to be part of this. It's a first for me. So, but yeah, so thanks for having me on. You know, I don't know where exactly you want me to start. You want me to start with the beginning, how I ended up over here, or?
Well, yeah, sure. Obviously you're from the UK, obviously. I'm interested, what I really want to to dive into is, first off, where did you grow up over in England? How did you come to the United States? And what got you into, the firearms community?
Okay. Well, I'm originally from Newcastle. That's up in the northeast of England. For anyone who didn't know where that is, kind of where the home of the Newcastle Brown Ale, if you're used to that beer. So
That's very good. Very good.
yeah, it was. We had some good times when I was a kid growing up there. Drank more than I should have. And I kind of, at a young age, I moved away from Newcastle, moved down to Nottingham, which is pretty much in the center of the country. And while I was in Nottingham, after I left school, I ended up joining the British Army. And when did I join there? That was early 2005. So I think I was enlisted around about end of January that year. So, ended up going back up north, up to the barracks in Yorkshire. And we did 26 weeks. 12 weeks of basic infantry training, and then moved on to 14 weeks of advanced infantry combat skills and stuff like that. And then once we finished that, I ended up getting posted down to London, joined my battalion. And I was in the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards. So I was pretty much, we guarded the Royal Palaces, Buckingham Palace, St. James's Palace, Tower of London, Windsor Castle, took part in all the ceremonial duties. And at the same time, my battalion was also, obviously deployed as well. So my battalion went to numerous places all over, pretty much everywhere. Where you found Americans, you'd find the Brits. So we were tagging along somewhere. And I'd say probably in about 2006, my future wife, I just happened to bump into. I just got back into the country from being overseas for a little bit, and we met in a bar called O'Neill's, and there was just a couple of us guys just chilling out, having a nice cold beer, and one of her girlfriends came over and said, "You guys look like you're pretty, bored. You want to come over and chat with us girls over here?" So we all went over at this table. There was probably about 5 of us, and there was a table of about 20 American girls. So we just started chatting. We're kind of going around the table, just getting to know each other. And then I just kind of started chatting to one for the rest of the night. And it just went from there. We were engaged within 6 months, married within pretty much a year. So it was quick. She moved over to England. She spent 5 years with me in England. And then as my time in the military was drawing to a close, I ended up serving about 8 years. We wanted to have a family, stuff like that. It just wasn't going to happen while we were in the military, because having to be away from home for such a long period of times, it's not the environment I really wanted to raise a child. I wanted to be a civilian to do it. Not saying that you can't do both, but just for myself, I think every family is different. And I grew up without a father, so I wanted to be a big part of my daughter's life growing up. So. Yeah. So that was one of the main things as to why we didn't kind of get into the whole kid thing a lot sooner. So, ended up applying, to get over to the United States. I had to go to the U.S. Embassy, fill out a hell of a lot of paperwork, as you can imagine. I didn't just jump over the border and start buying firearms, So I think the whole process it took probably about a year or so with all the documentation. So I kind of had a heads up about when I was going to be discharged, so I could start kind of get my paperwork in, so that there was a natural transition into me leaving the military and then immigrating to the United States of America. So my wife ended up coming back over to the United States about 6 months before I did, because I was still actually enlisted at the time, so I couldn't just leave the country and come to America. With her, and obviously we wanted to get set up financially, so it was best that at least one of us had a job when we both turned up here. So my wife ended up moving back to St. Louis. She's not originally from there, but that's where her family was living. So she was living with a mother and father and working, and then I was just waiting for my discharge date. And believe it or not, my discharge date from the military was July 4th, 2011. I don't know how that happened. I don't know. Maybe they knew I was moving to America and they just decided that this would be funny. So I got my independence back on Independence Day, which was kind of nice.
Very good, very good.
So you know, from then obviously I you know, I ended up moving over to America. I think it was around about the end of August. You know, by the time all my proper paperwork came through, and once I got into the States. You know, I went through immigration and did everything like that. And I think I had to wait about 6 weeks till I got my actual green card mailed to me, and my I'm blanking on the name of it right now. The Social Security number. So obviously, you know, two of the main things that you need to work in the US, you need Social Security, and you need as an immigrant, you need some sort of visa, you know. So, and I was kind of lucky, to be honest, as well, saying that, because I actually got given permanent residency immediately, which doesn't tend to happen to a lot of immigrants. You know, and I think that the main thing of it, I'd already been married for over 5 years to an American, and she was living with me in England. You know, she was a permanent resident of England as well. She didn't go down the citizenship route there, you know, because once we decided we were going to move back over to America, or at least I was going to try for my first time to get over here. You know, we didn't want to spend any more money in the UK, because it's an expensive process to become a citizen of the country. You know, so, you know, kind of. Long story cut short there, that's how we kind of ended up over here, you know, and, you know, I'm very happy over here. You know, I have no interest in really going and moving anywhere else, you know, back over to England or anywhere else in Europe. I think I'm just incredibly lucky that I'm here, you know, because I could be, I could be stuck in England.
Right on. Well, you know, I have a huge, profound respect for the Brits. I've always had a connection with the British culture through my stepmother, who had a very close friendship with a gentleman named Charlie, who was in the Black Watch in the, in the Scottish military, which is really cool. We actually ended up with a Black Watch kilt, and I wore that to my senior prom. So way back in the day. But anyway, I visited London in 2011 and fell in love with it. I've been enthralled with English history since I can possibly remember, and so the first chance that I got a chance to see what you were doing on Instagram, and then we chatted through direct message and everything, I was like, I've got to get this guy on. One of the reasons why I wanted to get you on is what, you know, I wanted to get kind of a lot of people understand the differences between America and the United States, especially with the gun community. But from what you've seen, what is the major differences? What can you do in England? What can't you do in England, opposed to what you can and can't do here in the United States?
So, I mean, when I was in the United Kingdom, obviously I was in the British Army. I didn't own any firearms in the United Kingdom. You know, it was pretty rare to come across someone who actually owned firearms. Most of the people who tended to have them were farmers, you know, having a double-barrel shotgun, something similar to that. Because I think the capacity laws for shotguns are 2+1. So, you know, there's nothing kind of, I guess, you know, tactical type shotguns, stuff like that is kind of really hard to get a hold of because of that. But like I say, I'm not an expert on the British gun laws. I probably know more about the American gun laws since that's kind of what I've been focusing on while I've been here, making sure, you know, I'm staying within any regulations with regards to NFA stuff and all of that. But you know, obviously as a kid growing up, you know, I was born in the 80s, so I kind of caught the tail end of the 80s with the movies in the early 90s, you know, kept watching all these American movies and stuff and becoming, you know, kind of just amazed at some of the stuff that was happening in these movies. You know, I was always kind of like a kid who used to like G.I. Joes and stuff like that as a kid, and Green Soldiers, you know, setting up your toy soldiers and everything like that. So I was always fascinated by the military and firearms and stuff like that. And that just transitioned over to me joining the military. You know, and obviously then getting my hands on some guns for the first time. And I'll tell you, I was a terrible shot when I first joined the military. You know, and I think that's probably one of the differences between Americans probably joining up and Brits for the first time, because most Americans who are joining the military have fired a firearm of some sort before they join, whereas in the UK that doesn't tend to happen. You know, the ownership over there is highly restricted. You know, and getting ownership of the different licensing is pretty hard. You know, because you got to get your local police departments and stuff to all sign off on it, and you know, they're not always going to play a game. You know, so and there's a lot more. You know, bells and whistles you got to kind of jump through until you get to that point, you know, and the type of firearms you can own as well is obviously highly restricted. You know, you couldn't just own, you know, an AR-15. You can't just own like an AKM, AK-47 variant, something like that. You know, the semi-automatic has been banned, you know, for a long time, pretty much since I think it was the late 80s. I think there was a mass shooting somewhere down south, and then they kind of went away. And then handguns went away in the mid 90s when we had the Dunblane massacre up in Scotland. You know, so you know, and stuff like that. Obviously, it happens. There's nothing. I don't think there's really too much you can do to stop that. And England had some of the best laws in the world, and it didn't do anything to stop it. You know. But you know, there's different ways that you can own different guns and stuff in the UK. Like with like if you want an AR-15, it has to be basically a straight pullback. There can't be a gas system on it or anything like that. So you could own an AR-15 type rifle, but if you wanted in anything other than 22 long rifle, it can't be semi-automatic. So it just would have to be a straight pullback.
Is there magazine restrictions on something like, say, if you were to do a Ruger or precision rifle, which is a bolt action, could you have, say, like a 20-round magazine, or is it restricted that way as well?
You know, I honestly don't know about that. I don't think so, because with the semi-autos being banned, I have seen, you know, a couple of the Instagrammers from the United Kingdom who post pictures of their firearm collections. They typically tend to be rimfire, because anything over 22 long rifle in semi-auto is restricted. You can't get hold of it, you know, and if you've got it, you better not post any pictures or shoot it, because they'll get you. But there's obviously a lot of milsurp type bolt action rifle stuff like that. There's a huge Enfield. You know, if you're into Enfields, where's the best place to be? It would be Britain, because they've got all sorts. Same with Mosins, they've got a lot of Mosin Nagant, stuff like that. Yeah. But any of the more modern stuff, it's just all restricted. It's gone. You know, it's never coming back over there.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, you know, and naturally with the recent events over Valentine's Day here, you know, there's going to be a number of demonstrations and uproars that they're really going to want to look at our gun control laws to see what improvements can be made, and that's a discussion that people probably smarter than myself probably need to have. I have my own opinions, but they're just my opinions.
Yeah,
so
I'm definitely in the same boat with that. It's you know, I tend not to even on Instagram and stuff. I try not to get too into it with people, because I think when you start, there is accounts out there where they do post very politically charged comments and stuff, and I'm just kind of not like that. I kind of just want to go off and just like, hey, just share my collection, you know, kind of speak with different people who got similar kind of firearms to what I have, you know, and just kind of that kind of stuff. I'm not really, not to say that I'm not politically aware in my own personal life, but I don't really want a social media presence of me being like too political. You know what I mean?
Everybody has their opinions. Everybody has their rights. We all know that the Second Amendment concludes itself by shall not be infringed, and that's I fully support the Second Amendment in that context. That it should never be infringed upon. But however, it has been slowly each and every year that we go by, especially as these tragedies continue to happen. I think there needs to be more discussion about how to prevent these things. And there's been some lights or some instances where we can improve, that things kind of didn't happen the way they were supposed to. I think there's some FBI checks that didn't get taken care of like they were supposed to, and there's some flags raised by the administration of the high school. There's issues, but regardless of that fact, that doesn't matter. There's always room for improvement on these types of situations. And that's a discussion that needs to be had by people who are very, very intelligent about these things. The, say, Adam Krauts of the world. You know, I'm a big supporter of Adam Kraut and his run for the NRA board of directors. One of the questions, we're gonna get off of that.
That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is, and I really don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it. But one of the things I wanted to ask is, we had a question regarding like airsoft. Is there like a permitting process for airsoft guns that you know about?
You know, I had when I was in the military, I had a lot of friends who did that at the weekends and stuff. I was never kind of into it, but yeah, you have to be a member of a certified airsoft group. You know, they kind of license and they have an area where you go to, so you can actually have the airsoft firearms, which are, well, I guess firearms, but airsoft guns, which are kind of I guess the word would be like tactical guns. They wouldn't be like fluorescent yellow or orange or stuff like that. If you're not a member of some sort of group, I believe your guns can't look like the military or American civilian type firearms. But like, again, I'm not a you know, an expert in that area or anything like that. I'm not an expert in anything, but you know, I mean, I think I did it one time. I went out with them and did it, and it was fun, but I prefer putting live rounds down range, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Is there another question we had that came in? Is there anything specific that you like to collect, let's break it into two different questions. The first question is, what is it that you like to collect specifically? I mean, is there a certain genre? And then are there any antique items that you like to collect?
So this, I guess in one respect, this kind of ties us back around into obviously like school shootings and stuff, because what happened with me and my collection kind of spurned from what happened in Sandy Hook. You know, moving to America, I didn't intend to buy firearms, and wasn't that I was anti-gun or anything like that. I just didn't know I could. I didn't know that a non-citizen could own firearms in America. I had no idea that, and I think to some extent a lot of Americans didn't know that. You know, so when I went to my first gun shop back in, I think it was early 2012, and I was speaking to a guy behind the counter. I was like, you know, I was like, I'm a permanent resident. I said, I'm not even allowed to own anything over here. And he was like, oh yeah, you can buy anything off this shelf, you know. And I was just looking through.
I think I lost him there.
Still there?
Well, we're going to give him just a second, see if we can get the internet situation worked out. Are you back there, Brit?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so I lost you right at the point where you were saying that you were in the gun shop.
Yeah, so you know, obviously I was just looking around and I kind of asked the guy, what can I buy? You know, I said, I've got a permanent resident visa. I'm going to be here, you know, I'm not leaving anytime soon or anything like that. And he was like, you could pretty much buy anything you want off the rack here. So I ended up buying a Glock 17 Gen 4 back in early 2012. You know, I was looking for a 19, but they didn't have any in stock, so I went for the 17. And you know, I ended up I got delayed on the first time, and then I came to learn that as a non-citizen, you will always get delayed, from my experience, while they do the more in-depth background checks and stuff like that. So, you know, so I ended up getting delayed. It was 24 hours at that time I got delayed. So I was back the next day to collect it and pick it up. That was the quickest turnaround time I'd ever had for a delay. Usually after that, it was 72 hours after that, you know, where I could go around and pick it up. So, you know, I ended up buying the Glock 17, and then around about October 2012, I ended up buying my first AR-15. And I bought a Ruger SR556 piston AR-15 variant, and you know, and then, you know, not even, I don't know, a month or two later, then Sandy Hook happened, and I'd already read up on the gun laws at this time, kind of
lost them there again. I'm not sure.
I'm still here.
Brit, I'm sorry there. Yours, I don't know if it's my internet connection. It could very well be mine, but
yeah, I'm still getting you on my screen.
okay, it may be mine. But you're just saying that Sandy Hook had just happened.
Yeah, so Sandy Hook had just happened, and you know, and I knew what happened with the, you know, the '86, you know, machine gun ban and stuff like that, where, you know, like stuff that people wanted to buy, they'll never be able to afford it again. You know, with being, you know, $40,000-$50,000 firearm. It's like most Americans don't have that kind of money lying around where they can invest that sort of money into a firearm. So, you know, I kind of made the decision that I wanted to buy all the rifles that I ever really wanted. Like, it was a bucket list of guns. So I just kind of, over the next two or so years, that's when I was kind of at my peak, I guess, before I started having real responsibilities with a child and mortgage, where I, you know, kind of just bought anything that I wanted, you know, probably more than what the wife knew as well. So, you know, kind of just started from there. And it wasn't really after a particular genre. I think most of my collection is rifles, you know, AR-15 variants and, you know, Kalashnikov type firearms, and then a couple of oddities here and there, like the Israeli weapon industry firearms. You know, I do like the Galil Ace rifles. I think they're great firearms. The Tavor as well, when that came out. You know, so I just kind of ended up going the rifle route, because at the time, I think it was so close. I don't think we as a community realized how close it went to the wire, you know, because we could have lost the ability to probably purchase new AR-15s. They would have been gone. And the likelihood of them ever coming back, you know, when you just look at all the Chinese guns, import ban, never see them again. Now the Russian guns, we'll never see the Russian guns again, you know. So I knew just enough that I should be, if I wanted these guns, I should buy them now. So I just kind of went that route. I bought stuff, probably paid a little bit too much for some of the stuff, you know, because, you know, I think I ended up paying nearly $1,000 for a Mini 14. And,
good night.
And, you know, and that was at Cabela's. And that's the only firearm I've ever purchased at Cabela's. And, you know, and I don't even shoot it. I just wanted one because I watched the A-Team when I was a kid, and I wanted an M4, and I wanted a Mini 14, you know. So, you know, just kind of stuff like that. You know, I like, you know, Die Hard. I watched Die Hard as a kid. You know, I wanted an MP5, so I bought an MP5, you know, and just kind of went from then. You know, I liked, you know, Black Hawk Down, so I wanted an AR-15 M16 type variant, you know, that kind of looked like basically a 20-inch AR-15, you know, or and just kind of from there, just movies I'd watched as a kid. I just wanted to start getting the guns that I used to have. Now, I mean, I used to play video games and stuff. I don't play video games anymore. But as a kid, you know, obviously playing these shooters and stuff, and you had all the guns on there. I just had a bucket list of stuff that I wanted to own, so I just started buying it. You know, and it just kind of, you know, one day I kind of turned around and looked, and I was like, I need a gun safe now, because I had too much that was just in a closet, you know, and I was like, if we get broken into, I don't want to be responsible for the carnage that could possibly happen. So I was like, the sensible thing was to buy a gun safe. So then that was my next big investment, and you know, and since then we've just kind of been I'm slowly adding to it every now and then. I'm not really buying at the pace I once was. Like I said, I've got responsibilities now, whereas, you know, 3 or 4 years ago I didn't have the responsibilities I've got now. So you know, and that's why I went pretty much semi-automatic rifles. I just wanted to buy, because the threat of us losing them, I think, is great, and it's still great. It's still very great today, you know. I think it's going to be touch and go over the next, you know, 10, 15 years, depending on who's running the Senate, who's running Congress, you know, who's in the White House. I think it's going to be pivotal to what rights we're going to have infringed, to be honest, because we are going to be infringed at some point. I think it's going to be inevitable in some respects.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I wanted to back up to here, I believe, let's see if I can get back here. By all means, people, everybody that's in the chat room, thanks for all your questions. One of the questions here from Andrew says, have you built an AR yet, or do you plan to?
Yes, my first AR-15, I kind of bit off more than I can chew, because I went with a non-standard lower and upper, so I went with a billet set, and it was not to spec, and it was one of the hardest things, and it's a very steep learning curve for me. You know, it wasn't a spec, but I ended up getting it where it needs to be. I built a couple others since then, and I've just stayed with the standard mil spec lowers, and I've had no issues. I think it's probably 3 or 4 that I've built. I built a Brownell's M16A1 variant before they really had all the surplus parts available. I was kind of like an early adopter on that. I kind of wanted to go that route. I think I built like a mid-length AR-15, which is very smooth shooting. It has an A2 carry handle upper. I'm very much an iron sights guy. I don't really have a lot of optics. I have an ACOG on one of my AR-15s, and I've got an 8-point Pro. But I'm very much, an iron sight. I kind of I tend to leave most of my firearms in kind of, I don't tactical them out really. I just kind of leave them as I don't put on stuff I don't need for the most part.
Well, so. Yep, very good, very good. And I'm the type of person that I've always got to tinker. So I've got my AR. I've built several, and then my ARs I usually end up selling them, and I start a new build. So, and that's kind of one of the agreements that the wife and I have. Is I can do whatever I want when it comes to gun stuff, as long as I'm letting something go to start the next project. So.
I have never let a firearm go. I've not sold a single one. And I've got firearms in my collection that I've never even shot. Yeah. So it's yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand it. Yeah, totally get that. And there may be a point one day that it happens to me too. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that fall into that same trap. So another question that we had, and you can expound as much or as little as you want, but from the British perspective, how do they view our Second Amendment? I mean, is it something that's very widely known, or do they just think that we're just a bunch of Wyatt Earps over here carrying around weapons on our hips?
I think for the most part, it's a lack of understanding what the actual Second Amendment is and why we have it. Most people don't read the constitutions of other countries, so they don't have really a clear understanding of what it is and why we have it. I think the misconception is that it's to do with hunting, and we get that all the time over here. No one needs an AR-15 to hunt. Well, no one needs a firearm to hunt. We can hunt any other way we want. The Second Amendment isn't there for hunting, and I think that's a very, very big misconception in the United Kingdom, because it's always nobody needs to have an assault rifle. I don't own any assault rifles.
Neither do I. They've never assaulted anyone I've ever known. So
I don't know how they stay in the safe. Because apparently they just get up and walk into the, airports, everything.
Yeah. So, and that's actually a good point. A lot of people are always, well, it's in our Constitution. Well, I mean, point taken there is, has anyone ever read the constitutions of any other country? So that's actually a really, really great point. So I wanted to take a real quick break here, to switch back over to everybody that's in the chat room. Thanks for swinging by. Hez, Andrew, LFG 1776, Steve. Really appreciate you guys swinging by and asking your questions. By all means, keep on sending those questions in. And I want to switch up real quick here, Brit, to kind of a lightning round of questions for you. I'm just going to do, we're going to do 2 segments. We'll do one right now, and then we'll save one for a little bit later. But we'll switch up things a little bit. Here we go. So 3 questions. First thing that pops in your mind, tell me what you think. First, your favorite long gun.
It would be an AR-15.
Specifically, let me back up. Your favorite long gun that you have and own right now.
It would be my I've got the FN Military Collectors M4 with a 14.7-inch barrel. I honestly believe that the British Army should adopt an AR-15. And I know the carbine length gas system can be, you know, it's sometimes not the most clean shooting firearm, but I honestly believe it's a great firearm. I mean, it's been around for so long now, and I don't know why the British Army is still using the L85.
Yeah. It's actually cool. I like the Brit's rifle. I don't know how utilitarian it is. I mean, we're used to the M4 AR-15 variant. So, all right. So we'll circle back around to that here in just a second. Your favorite pistol?
That would be my Glock 17 Gen 4.
Right.
Yeah. I like the full size grip. I got relatively big hands, so it's the 19 feels good, but the 17 feels better.
Right on, right on. So I've been out shooting this today. This is the H&K VP9. I've shot this. Oh man, I put about 250 rounds through it this afternoon, and I've really been loving it. There's some things I don't like about it, but I'll save that for later. And then finally, do you carry a knife every day? And if you do, what kind of knife do you have?
You know, I don't every day carry a knife. Okay. I should, and I need to get on. I need to get on the knife EDC. You know, that might be something I need to look into, because I've you know, kind of like my job that I do. I work in retail, but I'm kind of on the operations side of things. So I'm kind of always in the back of the store doing something. So most of the time I am carrying a knife, but it ain't. it's not anything like EDC worthy.
Right. So, right. So I just carry this little thing my dad gave me. It's nothing special. He got it free, and he's like, "Hey, can you use this?" And I've actually really liked it. It's just a simple knife. It locks open, no problem. Yeah. It's got he got it free from the NRA, so that's, you know, take it or leave it.
I think as well. I mean, while we're on that subject of EDC and stuff, so I am a concealed you know, permit holder. Obviously, we don't need one in the state of Kansas, right. But I do have one, because you know, whenever I leave Kansas, I'd rather have it, depending on which state I'm going to, you know, because I do like going on little road trips here and there, and I want to have my firearm with me pretty much wherever I go, you know, but. Insane with like EDC knives and stuff like that. I have known people who have been fired from their jobs for concealing a pistol. You know, because obviously a lot of companies, they don't post it in the windows, but it's in the employee you know, handbooks and stuff like that. No, they can't carry weapons, so on and so on. So, but it's just one of those things. You know, it's hard to get that balance between you know, your personal, what you feel like you need to carry every day, and what your employee says you need, your employer said that you need. You know, so yeah, it kind of sucks, because if I could, I would carry 100% of the time.
Right. So just to recap, we were talking with Kansas Brit, is a follower of mine, and I'm a follower of his on Instagram. And as you can tell, he's not originally from the United States. So that's always been a great angle and interesting question. So you've been talking about EDC and how some businesses have policies written into their employees' agreements that you cannot conceal carry. The great thing about Kansas, and you need to check your laws in your state, but in the state of Kansas, you're allowed to hold your pistol in your vehicle, and that's something that I take advantage of on a regular basis, not necessarily every single day, but whenever I am able to, I do that. I lock my vehicle. Obviously, I lock my weapons up in my car as well, to ensure that I have the ability to get to my tools whenever I need to. However, what's your thoughts on that? Would you take your weapons with you and then just secure them in your vehicle appropriately, or do you just leave those at home and just carry when you're able to? How does that work for you?
I try to carry whenever I can. You know, I'm not going to say I carry 100% of the time, because I don't. You know, I try to carry whenever I'm not at work. Wherever I go, if I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going wherever with my daughter, family, whatever, I'm always carrying something, because you never know when you might need it. I'd rather have the gun than not have a gun. You know, and I think that's a little bit when my mum comes over from England and visits and stuff, she kind of feels like, oh, you're putting your phone, getting your keys, getting my gun. You know, it's kind of, you know, it's new to them. You know, and my mother, when she comes over, I've taken her to the range, and she's had a blast at the range. Trust me.
That's awesome. Yep.
You know, and she really enjoyed it. You know, and she didn't know anything about the Second Amendment or you know, and firearms. She'd never fired a gun in her life. It was definitely funny watching her shoot the 12 gauge, because my mum is very small, so. We only put one round in there so that she couldn't, you know, if she fell over, it wouldn't be unsafe or anything. But yeah, and I do the same. I kind of lock my firearms in my car as well. I've got a little safe in there that locks up, and you know, it's I'd rather have it close to wherever I'm at. You know, you just never know these days, particularly in, you know, crowded public areas. I would rather have the ability to defend myself than not. So.
One question that came through was, have you had any experience with the 308 version of the AR-10 or 1911s?
No, I haven't. Well, I guess that's two questions, right? 1911, I do own a 1911. I have a Ruger SR 1911, which was an impulse buy. I happened just to see it, and I think it was at Bass Pro down in Alatha, and you know, bought it there on the spot. I had my cousin from England who was visiting at the time, and he was only, I think he was 14 at the time, so he'd never been in gun stores, stuff like that. So it was an experience for him, and I was like, I think I'll buy that, you know. And obviously I got delayed, so I couldn't take it home that back then. I am a citizen now, so just in case anyone's wondering, I'm a U.S. citizen. I have been a U.S. citizen since 2015, so I don't get delayed anymore. I you know, and obviously being a permit holder in the state of Kansas, you fill out the background check, but they don't run it. They basically, you know, they just shelve it, and you know, you can leave the store with it because you've exceeded the minimum requirements by getting your permit. So in the state of Kansas, I don't know if other states do that. I would, you know, but it's
yeah, and that's one of the great advantages of the state of Kansas, with us being a Constitution carry state, and the fast track that they've been able to allow us law-abiding citizens to you know, purchase firearms. So
I didn't answer the other question, sorry, as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
AR-10 variants, I have never fired an AR-10 variant. However, the Brownells AR-10 variants look incredible. The I forget what the exact names are. I think you probably saw them at SHOT Show, right? When you were...
Nah, I didn't get over to the Brownell side, but I know that they are really pushing their vintage line of AR-10s. So I don't know what they are either.
I mean, myself as well, I have built, like I said, I built, you know, AR-15s and stuff like that. I'm not a member of any forums or anything like AR-15.com or anything like that. So I kind of, you know, my knowledge of gun building has been self-taught and YouTube instructional videos and stuff. But, you know, I have heard that AR-10 builds can be sometimes very finicky. So I've just kind of, I haven't really went down that, you know, that route yet. Not to say I wouldn't in the future. But, you know, I do own a couple of 308 rifles. I have a FAL SA-58. That was from DS Arms that I have. It's the 21-inch barrel version, which is it's got probably one of the worst triggers I've ever felt. It is the most grittiest trigger I think I've ever touched. And that's saying a lot, because the L85 trigger is terrible. Yeah. And I've also got a PTR 91. I got the PTR 91 Black Classic, so it's kind of like a G3 clone. It doesn't have the 1913 rail on the top though, because I like my guns to kind of look classic, and I don't need 1913 rails all over a G3 gun. You know, it's a type of gun that I'm only going to shoot, you know, every so often, because 308's not cheap.
Right. Well, we got a friend of the channel who has a channel himself, 1776 or bust. He is a huge Steyr fan, and he has a Steyr M9 pistol. He talks about it all the time. He loves it. He loves that pistol to death. Are you familiar with those? Have you ever shot one? I
haven't shot one. I have fired a Steyr AUG before. We had like a foreign weapons familiarization course while I was in the military, so I got to fire a lot of different firearms on full automatic, and that was one of them. I really liked it. Very smooth shooting for a bullpup, and the trigger was far better than the L85 again, like you know, and it was a lot lighter. The L85 is a heavy firearm for what it is.
Right. Yeah. So the L85 is the service rifle of the British Army. Is that correct? I just want to make
Yes.
sure.
So there was when I actually joined the British Army, it was kind of a unique time because they were phasing out the L85A1 and then moving on to the Heckler and Koch modified L85A2 variant. So we went from you know, the Enfield version of it to the HK version. You know, the A1 version, in my experience, the magazines were atrocious. They were absolute garbage. They were these aluminum the aluminum mags. They didn't have anti-tilt followers in them or anything like that. They were just the springs would bind. They were just horrible. You know, and it didn't help that the magazines were, you know, beaten to hell when you got issued them as well. So, you know, it's kind of, you know what it's like. It kind of happens everywhere with the military.
Yeah, same problem with us too when I went to Iraq. So,
and then with you know, the HK variant, I mean, they really did pretty much rebuild the gun. The only thing which I think was really carried over was the receiver and the barrel. Everything else they kind of redesigned to some extent. You know, it kind of looks exactly the same, but there's, you know, the millimeters or micromillimeters at time, the adjustments that they made to make the weapon more reliable, and they did make it more reliable. They definitely improved the magazines. The HK steel magazines, some of the best magazines that you could ever use, honestly. I don't own any at the minute because they're so expensive to get a hold of. I think they're $50 a magazine over here, which is pretty expensive. You know, obviously they're imported from Germany. So what do you expect? HK's not.
No, they're not. No, they're not. I just started getting into the MP5 clones, I guess you can call it. I've always wanted one. I've always wanted to shoot one. I finally got to shoot one a couple weekends ago with my Pakistani Ordnance Factory 5, and the recoil on that was absolutely there's nothing.
It's non-existent, right?
It blows my mind. And the I'm working on trying to get a arm brace for it to see what that's going to be like, and do some other modifications to it. So there's going to be more to come. But the magazines, the point I was going to make was the magazines are just unbelievably expensive. I think I've spent $70 on 2 POF magazines. So it's just, man, it's
in my experience as well, because I do have a Pakistan Ordnance Factory MP5. I was kind of an early adopter with that. I think it was when Tim at the Military Arms channel posted a video when they first got imported, and I was on his website immediately buying one. You know, because I think at the time there wasn't really anything like that, because I think it was the first. I mean, obviously the Turkish guns, the MKE, had been imported in the past, and then they went away, and then the POF came in. But the difference with the POF, it had the 2 push pin lower, whereas before the MKE guns, when they were imported, they just had the 1 push pin in the lower, and it was just a shelf that the lower fit into. So, you know, and obviously the MKE guns have came back in now, and I think probably the quality control on the MKE is probably a lot higher than the POF. You know, the finish on my MP5 is rough, but you know, I don't leave that at home. When I go to the range, I take my MP5 every time, and that's probably one of the reasons why I haven't put rounds through some of my other rifles I own, because I end up always taking my favorite rifles, and when I even though I know I shouldn't, I need to give other rifles a try, I just always seem to revert back to taking my favorite.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. I totally understand that. I went to the range today to get some accuracy testing done on the PA-10 Gen 2 from Palmetto State Armory, their AR-10 variant that they've got. It's a long overdue video, but when I was getting everything together and in my mind thinking, what else do I want to shoot? I was going back to, well, I had so much fun with the VP9, I need to try it again. And to add on to that, one of the birthday gifts that I got this year was a shot timer. Oh, nice. So yeah, if you don't have one, if you need one, you have to go get one. If you don't have one, you got to get one. It is so much fun just to put you under just a little bit of stress and trying to speed your draws up, or speed your double taps, or your magazine reloads, whatever the case may be. It's been a lot of fun. So I hear what you're saying. You're absolutely right. You go to the range and you're always trying to find something new to do, but you find yourself doing the exact same things over and over and over again.
It's and I think that's one of the other things that I really like about the Rangers. I try to take friends who aren't firearm owners with me a lot of the times, you know, because you know, I have a lot. There's a lot of people who are very skeptical about guns. You know, they've either been told that guns are bad, or you know, you don't need one of them, or whatever. They grew up in an anti-firearm environment, you know, and you know, I always try to take, you know, I talk about it at work with my colleagues, you know, and everyone at work knows what I have. They know the type of person I am. So, and I think it's one of those. It's kind of like, you know, I'm just a regular guy who just happens to like guns. You know, I'm not some crazy prepper dude who's, you know, thinking the government's going to come swooping down and take me, you know, try and take everything I've got. I mean, not to say that that couldn't eventually happen at some point. You never know with whoever's in the White House. But, you know, I'm just a regular dude who happens to like firearms, you know, and I like to share my passion. That's why I'm on Instagram taking, you know, and having conversations with people, and you know, and I get messages from people all over the world asking me stuff. I mean, I get more messages than I can answer, you know, and I try to get through my message box, but you know, sometimes it just gets blown up.
That's amazing. You know, and I can tell you right now, I know that some people are not on Instagram, and if you're not, I'd encourage you to open an account just so you can get over to see Brit stuff. The pictures you take are absolutely gorgeous. I don't think that I'm the world's best photographer, but I think I can take a couple good pictures, and the stuff that you post just blow anything I would ever dream of doing out of the water. So,
well, thank you, but I'm not a master photographer, honestly. You know, most of the pictures I just take with my iPhone. You know, I do have an iPhone 10, so it does have the enhanced camera on it, the portrait mode. So taking portrait modes, obviously the portrait mode was designed to take pictures of people. I just used it to take pictures of firearms, and people at work think I'm crazy, honestly. You know, when I show them this, you know, because I'll be going through my picture show, and I'll have a portrait of, you know, my wife and our daughter, and then the next picture will be a portrait of an MP5, you know, or an AR-15, or you know, stuff like that. And you know, people just take everything with a grain of salt with me when I'm about, you know.
Right.
So
so one of the other things I want to do real quick is I want to go back to my rapid fire real quick, and the questions that these are not scripted. I'm just going to shoot them off as soon as they come in my head. Just we'll go real quick. Just give me your answer, and we'll go right to the next question. So we've already talked about your favorite long gun, your favorite pistol. What weapon is on your dream list?
That's a hard one.
We'll go back to it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, I would probably go for the FN Scar. You know, it's, you know, it's an expensive firearm for what it actually is, and
yeah, it is.
But I think I'd still like to have one, you know. But I'm not in a position now, since I've got more responsibilities, that I could just go and drop that kind of money on a firearm. It would take me, you know, best part of a year and a bit, probably saving up to drop that much money on one firearm at any given time.
Right. All right. Scar, and that's a pretty cool rifle. So what would be your favorite historical rifle? Something that's not mainstream. That's you know at least 50 years old or older.
I would say the M1 Garand. I want one of them as well. You know, I just haven't got around to buying one. I only have one Milsurp rifle at the minute, which is a Lee Enfield No. 4 Mark 1. I do want to get into more Milsurp type stuff, but again, it's the timing of me moving to America. It was so late in the Milsurp market, really, that all we see these days is Milsurp pistols, and I'm not really interested in getting Comblock pistols. Maybe the Makarovs and stuff look pretty cool, but I'm not interested in Yugo pistols, the Tokarevs and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
right. So if you could get any type of Old West style pistol, what would it be? or are you very familiar with any of that stuff?
I'm not too familiar. It's a little bit probably out of my realm, but I would like some sort of lever action. Definitely maybe 30-30, something like that. I do like I do like the receivers where you actually load the rounds into the receiver instead of it being, I think what is it? What's the tube called? Tube loading firearm? Like,
yeah, magazine tube.
They look cool, but I think I would rather have like a side loading, just because it would be easier to load and stuff like that. Right. But that's not like, honestly, they're firearms I haven't even considered purchasing because of just, hey, I wanted to focus on semi-auto rifles because I didn't want to get to a point where some sort of legislation passes and I didn't have what I wanted, and then I would have to pay, extortionate amounts for it. So.
Had a comment come in. One of our watchers here says the Colt Single Action Army is one of their dream old time rifles or pistols, revolvers, whatever you want to say. So let's get back into it. Favorite movie right now?
But new movie or like all time?
Yeah, sure. New, then all time.
Okay. Favorite new movie? I got to watch Thor Ragnarok not too long ago. I thought that was great. A lot funnier than I expected. I do like the Marvel movies. So I need to go see Black Panther. That's on my list that I need to get to before we see Infinity War in the summer. So probably my favorite all time movie has to be Saving Private Ryan. I do have a very big sweet spot for World War II movies, and I don't think before that movie came along, I don't think there was really a realistic portrayal of what our greatest generation actually went through.
Of it, yeah.
I had never witnessed anything quite like that, and that film probably didn't even come close to what it was really like. Right. But it was horrific. But watching it and and it's going all the way through it. Spielberg was absolutely incredible with what he did, how he filmed that movie. The cinematography, the authentic firearms, everything about it was just phenomenal.
Yep. What about Dunkirk? Have you had a chance to see Dunkirk?
Yes, I got a chance to see that. Very good. I like Tom Hardy in it. It's just like Christopher Nolan is one of them special. He's in that Spielberg bracket of directors who is truly a magnificent director. It took me a little bit at first to get used to how the story was swinging around, showing different perspectives and stuff. Yes. But it's definitely one of the movies that I feel like you need to watch twice to really appreciate, because the first time I watched it, I kind of, I probably wasn't paying as close attention as I should have been to how it was moving around. But definitely after the second time, I was kind of like, yeah, this is phenomenal. Yeah. Like how we went about it.
Both of those very, very good movies. Both top, I would say probably top 10 on my list as well. But that top 10 changes weekly anyway. Oh, I forgot this movie. I forgot that movie. Oh, yeah. I can't believe I forget all these movies. So right on. Well, we're getting close here to being right at an hour. I really want to appreciate say thank you very much for swinging by, and thank you everybody who's been watching. I really appreciate everybody's attendance and your questions as always. I did want to make a note here real quick. Let's see here. Bald and Curious asked everybody to swing by and check out The Crazy Scotsman. He did a chat with I believe what he's trying to say is he did a chat with Janice Gay, and he shaved his head for the CMAX charity that's going on. So great on you guys. Just keep on rolling with that. I sure do appreciate everybody's support for that. Real quick, Brit, I'll swing it over to you. Is there any questions that you had?
Yeah. So let me swing this on to you. What was your first ever firearm purchase? And how old were you when you got it? Were you a kid or?
No. I bought my very first pistol in 2005, if you can believe it or not. And one of the reasons why is, I grew up around weapons. My dad had been a collector for quite some time. He was an FFL at one point. So we went to gun shows all the time, especially the one down in Tulsa, which is a huge gun. And so we went down there at least once a year, if not twice, for the spring and fall shows. So I'd always been around it, but it wasn't until 2005 that I actually got a chance to save enough money to buy. And my very first pistol was the Springfield XD45 full size.
Mm-hmm.
I was brought up, right, wrong, or indifferent, that the 45 ACP was the only pistol cartridge that you should ever need, and one shot, would cause a person to blow up into sparks and all that jazz. And it wasn't until later that I understood that, yeah, it's a great round. It serves a purpose, and has served a purpose for a century now. But other rounds are viable as well. And now I'm a big fan of 9mm. Just the way it is.
There's just so many varieties in the 9mm ammunition at the minute. There really is. There's some fantastic loads out there. Yep. So I kind of, most of the time I'm carrying Hornady Critical, and I think I think a lot of the time as well with me as well, ammunition is so expensive. So I try to focus on 223 firearms. And 9mm. Yeah, I do have a 40 Smith & Wesson. I have the HK VP40. It's kind of that was the first gun I purchased as a U.S. citizen, and I didn't get delayed. So I went in, filled out my background check, left within the hour by the time it came back. Right. So, and to be honest, I went out with the intention of buying a gun that day to see if I wouldn't get delayed.
Very nice. And, well, to kind of further your question too, it wasn't until 2009 before I bought my first rifle. Well, I shouldn't say that. I bought my first bolt action rifle in 2005. Which was nothing more than a 30-06 Remington 710, which has been discontinued because it's a piece of crap. But 2009 was my first AR, and I built that from a DS Arms lower and an LMT upper. So, and from there, I mean, it just snowballed from there. So, yeah.
Myself, like I say, moving over to the United States, it wasn't my intention really to do this. It wasn't until I understood what I could actually own, and it just kind of went from there. And then I kind of branched into the NFA bracket with some short-barreled rifles, So I don't own any suppressors or anything like that. I want to get into the suppressor side of things, but again, it's it's just I've got other priorities going on in my life at the moment where it's being a new homeowner, and there's always an unexpected something coming up that you've got to pay for. So.
Yep. So one comment came through. It said try a Luger P08 9mm sometime. So just throw that out for you. See what you think about that.
Pretty expensive. Yeah, I would like to shoot one. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, whenever I go up to Cabela's in Kansas City, they've always got Lugers in there. They're definitely pricey firearms, but they look sweet. I would definitely, I would love to have one in my collection. I definitely wouldn't turn it down. I'll tell you that.
So any other questions you had?
So as well, I mean, I guess, do you do a lot of hunting or anything?
I do. Yeah.
You do? So myself, I'm not a hunter. I'm not opposed to doing it or anything like that. It's just, obviously growing up in England just wasn't something we did, because, I mean, we don't have any really wild game over there. We've got some deers, but everything else has been hunted to extinction on our little island, So it's just something we don't do.
Yeah. And when I didn't really get into hunting until about 2012, and I started bow hunting. Deer, got my first doe and my first buck that year. Incidentally, that buck has been the biggest buck I've ever shot to this point. But we totally hunt for food. I try to get at least 1 to 2 deer a year, and that typically gets us through the year for meat, because we like to eat venison. We don't eat too much cow. So. Or beef, whatever you want to call it. But and then we also I've gotten into upland bird hunting and shooting quail, pheasant, stuff like that. And we obviously I bring that home, and those are always nice little appetizers or treats for us for our dinners. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're more than welcome if you ever get a chance to get out and get your hunter safety stuff taken care of and get a license and everything. You're more than welcome to join us. We'd be happy to have you, and I can always show you the ropes and all that jazz.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'd like to do that sometime. Definitely like to get my feet wet on that area. But as well, I think we should as well. We need to come and hit a range up sometime.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I would definitely love to bring some of my toys down there for you to have a look at. I'm not opposed to I mean, obviously the NFA stuff I would have to, because of my stuff, I'm not on a trust. I just did all my stuff as individual because at the moment, definitely it's processing a lot quicker than trust just doing it as an individual. So, my longest wait, I think, was about 11 months for a stamp. And my shortest was my MP5, which took, I think it was like 90 days. So, and that was pre NFA regulation change. So, I would definitely, I would love to lend you whatever I've got, you to do a video on them, whatever. I think it's cool. I think it's incredibly important to really have, friendships with people who do have the same kind of, beliefs and kind of, they're into the same type of stuff, because sometimes it's, there's a lot of people who, you kind of want to do good things with, but they're just not interested. I've got some great friends that I've asked to take them to the range, and they're not interested. They just not against guns. They just don't want to do it. So it's kind of hard because when I've got time off, it's kind of what I want to do. I don't want to, I don't go out. I don't drink. I gave up alcohol a few years back because it just it was expensive, and I had too many hangovers in the mornings, particularly when I drank tequila. So. I kind of just went the other way, and I was like, no, less beer money, less alcohol, and I've got more range time with more, more money for ammunition. So
definitely, and I've got family off that direction, so I can definitely head your direction anytime. And if you've got time, by all means, head back west, and we'll definitely get together, and I'll let you shoot the stuff that I've got, and I'd love to be able to shoot some of your SBRs and stuff like that you've got going on. So
we'll definitely find a date.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Thank you so much again for swinging by and taking time out of your evening. I know you've got a lot of obligations on your side, so I sure do appreciate it. Thanks everybody that came in through the chat. I really appreciated all the questions that you guys had, and all the dialogue that you had back and forth. So, yeah. Sorry about that, Reaper. So you're late to the game. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks again. I really appreciate Brit. If you're on Instagram, by all means, go find him. It's Kansas_Brit, and check out his page there. It is pretty neat. Some of the things that he's got going on, and some of the things that he does. And that's really all I got this time. Brit, I'll give you the last word. What do you want to say?
I ain't got anything.
Okay.
I'll say thanks a lot. It's been a lot of fun. It's, we'll definitely have to meet up, like I said, and, hit me up if you want to have maybe if we have a group chat next time, we've got some more people, we get some more people on the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Absolutely. So maybe we can, maybe I can work out some, an opportunity for us to get you pulled into some of the other chats that I do as well. And I think I have another guy that might be interested in talking to you. Anyway, all right. So that's all I got this time. Thanks everybody for swinging by. I really appreciate it. Again, check out Instagram, Kansas_Brit, and also check out the CMAX stuff. Appreciate it. That's all I got this time. Thanks y'all. Take it easy. Bye.
Take care. Thanks. Bye.